The last beacon. High crystal arch Vex 9 stood atop the crumbling spire of Nexus Prime, watching his empire die. The crystalline being's translucent body flickered with dim purple light, a shadow of the brilliant radiance that had once marked his species as the galaxy's most advanced civilization. Around him, the great city of eternal crystal sang its death song as towers collapsed under the relentless assault of the Void Hunters. The enemy had come from the spaces between stars, creatures of pure hunger that devoured energy and advanced technology, like cosmic locusts. For 3,000 years, the Zeltharian Empire had ruled over 47 star systems, their crystalline cities floating in perfect harmony, their psychic networks spanning entire sectors. They had considered themselves the pinnacle of galactic evolution, beings of pure thought and energy who had transcended the crude limitations of flesh and metal. Now they were refugees. High Crystal Arch. The voice of Sub-Adept Kick 7 resonated through the emergency psychic network, barely a whisper compared to the mighty telepathic chorus that had once connected every Zeltharian mind. Our final evacuation ships are departing. The Void Spawn have breached the planetary shields. Vex 9 turned from the viewport, his 8-foot frame moving with the fluid grace that had once intimidated lesser species across the galaxy. His face, if it could be called that, was a complex arrangement of light-conducting crystal formations that served as sensory organs. Those formations now pulsed with desperate determination. "Status of the fleet?" he asked, though he already knew the answer would bring no comfort. 17 ships remain from our once proud armada of 10,000, Keck 7 replied. 43 million souls aboard. The last survivors of our race. The Void Hunters consume our energy weapons faster than we can fire them. Our plasma cannons feed them strength. Our psychic attacks only draw them closer. The truth struck Vex 9 like a physical blow. Everything that made the Zeltharians superior was exactly what made them perfect prey for these monsters. Their advanced energy shields were devoured. Their quantum computers were absorbed. Even their enhanced consciousness, the pride of their species, served only to attract more hunters. Where are the other Galactic Council species? Vex 9 demanded. The Arctonian Federation. The cosmic minds of Proxima. Gone. Keck 7's mental voice carried the weight of genocide. The Arctonians fell 6 months ago. Their entire solar system is now a dead zone. The cosmic minds attempted to hide in their pocket dimensions. The Void Hunters followed them there and consumed the dimensions themselves. We are truly alone. Through the massive crystal windows of the command spire, Vex 9 watched as creatures of living shadow poured across his world's surface. They were not truly physical beings, but manifestations of hunger given form. Where they touched, technology ceased to function. Where they fed, even the quantum foam of space-time itself seemed to weaken. High Crystal Arch, another voice joined the psychic network, this one younger and filled with desperate hope. It was Trainee next to, barely 50 years old and still burning with the curiosity that age and wisdom typically dimmed. I have discovered something in the old archives. Speak quickly, Vex 9 commanded as explosions shook the spire around them. The Void Hunters had found their location. When we first established the Galactic Council, we cataloged all sentient species within our sphere of influence. Most were incorporated or guided toward enlightenment, but there were some we classified as too primitive or too dangerous to contact. Vex 9 felt a spark of desperate hope. Continue. There is a yellow star system, third planet from its sun. The inhabitants call themselves humans. We classified them as a Class 7 Deathworld species and established a no-contact protocol. They use primitive kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, and nuclear fission for warfare. Their technology is almost entirely mechanical rather than energy-based. The irony was not lost on Vex 9. Everything that had made humans seem primitive might be exactly what was needed now. The Void Hunters consumed energy and advanced technology, but how would they react to crude bullets and explosions? What else do we know about these humans? Next two's excitement was palpable through the psychic link. They are remarkable in their aggression and adaptability. Their entire planet is essentially a constant war zone, not between different species but among themselves. They fight over resources, territory, ideas, even abstract concepts. Most disturbing of all, they seem to treat warfare as both an art form and a science. Send the distress beacon, Vex 9 decided without hesitation. Include our star charts, the Void Hunter attack patterns, and a complete technical briefing. High Crystal Arch. Keck 7 protested. These humans are barely capable of interstellar travel. How could they possibly succeed where we have failed? Because, Vex 9 replied as another section of the spire collapsed around them. They think differently than we do. We fight to preserve our civilization. Perhaps what we need is a species that fights to destroy their enemies. The beacon launched just as the Void Hunters breached the command chamber. Vex 9 felt their hunger wash over him, draining the life from his crystalline form. With his last thought, he wondered if the primitive beings of the third planet would even understand their message, much less care about the fate of strangers from across the galaxy. 3 days later, on a space station orbiting Luna, Commander Sarah Chen stared at the translated alien message with growing amazement. She was a 40-year-old career military officer who had spent the last decade commanding humanity's small but efficient deep space patrol fleet. Her black hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her dark eyes held the steady gaze of someone accustomed to making life-and-death decisions. "Ma'am," Lieutenant James Morrison stood at attention beside her desk. "The xenobiology team confirms the message is genuine. These Eltharians are facing complete extinction from something they call Void Hunters." Chen studied the holographic star charts floating above her desk. The enemy's path of destruction was clear, a spiral of dead systems moving inexorably toward the galactic core. "What's our intelligence assessment, Lieutenant?" Dr. Webb's team has analyzed the technical data. The Void Hunters appear to be energy-consuming parasites. They feed on advanced technology, particularly anything involving exotic energy or quantum effects. Every weapon the aliens have tried has only made the enemy stronger. And they want our help because we're primitive enough to still use kinetic weapons and chemical explosives, Chen mused. The irony is beautiful. Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's chief xenobiologist, entered the briefing room carrying a tablet full of analysis reports. He was a thin, scholarly man in his 50s whose excitement at humanity's first contact with alien intelligence was barely contained. "Commander Chen," he said breathlessly, "this is unprecedented. These Eltharians had technology that makes our best equipment look like stone tools, yet they've been completely defeated. But look at this." He activated the holographic display, showing detailed scans of the Void Hunters. They're essentially living quantum fields that convert matter and energy into more of themselves. But they have no defense against pure kinetic force. Explain that in terms a soldier can understand, Doctor. Imagine trying to stop a bullet with a force field that only works on energy weapons. The bullet doesn't care about exotic physics. It just punches through and hits the target. These Void Hunters have evolved to counter every form of advanced warfare, but they've never encountered good old-fashioned explosives and projectile weapons. Chen stood and walked to the viewport overlooking Earth. The blue and white sphere below had always been considered a violent, dangerous world by the few alien probes that had observed it from a distance. Now that violence might be the key to saving an entire galaxy. "What's our response capability?" she asked. Lieutenant Morrison consulted his datapad. The Space Force has 68 ships currently operational, mostly frigates and destroyers, with a handful of heavy cruisers. Nothing like the massive fleets described in these alien databases. But our ships are armed with railguns, nuclear missiles, and kinetic bombardment systems, Chen pointed out. Everything these Void Hunters have no experience defending against. Dr. Webb nodded enthusiastically. According to the Zeltharian data, the enemy expects shields and energy weapons. They're essentially cosmic predators who've evolved to hunt one specific type of prey. We're something completely outside their experience. Chen made her decision. Lieutenant, prepare a message for Fleet Command. Request immediate authorization for first contact protocols and full military deployment. Include Dr. Webb's analysis and recommend we treat this as a Code 1 extinction-level threat. Ma'am, are we really going to try to save an alien species that considered us too primitive to contact until they were desperate? Sarah Chen smiled grimly. Lieutenant, sometimes being primitive is exactly what you need to survive. These aliens spent millennia becoming the perfect advanced civilization. We spent millennia perfecting the art of killing things. Let's see which skill set is more useful against cosmic parasites. As the message sped toward Earth's surface, Chen began planning humanity's first interstellar military campaign. The Zeltharians had called for help because they had nowhere else to turn. They were about to discover that when humans fight, they don't just seek victory, they seek the complete destruction of anything that threatens what they protect. The galaxy's most advanced species had fallen to the Void Hunters because they fought with honor and wisdom. Humanity was about to teach the universe that sometimes survival requires something far more primitive. Pure, unyielding fury backed by the willingness to use every weapon at your disposal. War was coming to the stars, and humanity was bringing it personally. Fire and fury. 2 weeks after receiving the Zeltharian distress call, the largest human military fleet in history assembled at the edge of the solar system. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, a heavy cruiser retrofitted specifically for this mission, watching as 68 human warships formed into battle formation. It wasn't much compared to the thousands of vessels the aliens had lost, but every ship bristled with weapons the Void Hunters had never encountered. Fleet Status Report. Chen commanded as she settled into the captain's chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the focused efficiency of professionals preparing for humanity's first interstellar war. All ships report ready for jump, announced Lieutenant Morrison from the communication station. Admiral Rodriguez confirms the battle plan is uploaded to all vessel commanders. Admiral Miguel Rodriguez had been recalled from retirement, specifically for this operation. At 63, he was one of the few human officers with experience in what military strategists called total warfare, conflicts where the complete destruction of the enemy was the only acceptable outcome. His weathered face appeared on the main screen from his flagship, the UES Hammer. Commander Chen, Rodriguez's voice carried the weight of decades spent studying the art of war. Our Zeltharian contacts have provided updated intelligence. The Void Hunters have consumed 3 more systems since their distress call. They're accelerating toward the Galactic core, growing stronger with each world they devour. Chen studied the tactical display showing the enemy's projected path. Estimated time until contact: 6 hours. We'll intercept them at the Kepler 442 system, where they're currently feeding on the remains of something called the Harmony Collective. According to our alien friends, this was a species of peaceful philosophers who believed violence was a cosmic evil. Perfect victims for energy vampires, Chen observed grimly. What's our strategic assessment? Dr. Webb's voice joined the conversation from the UES Discovery, a converted research vessel loaded with xenobiology equipment. Based on Zeltharian data, the Void Hunters operate like a swarm intelligence. They consume energy-based technology to reproduce and grow larger. Each feeding makes them stronger and more numerous. But they've never faced projectile weapons or chemical explosives, added Captain Lisa Park from her position aboard the fighter carrier UES Valkyrie. She was humanity's best pilot, a woman whose reputation for aggressive tactics had made her legendary among the Space Force. Our war games against simulated energy-consuming entities showed a 93% effectiveness rate for kinetic weapons. Admiral Rodriguez nodded approvingly. The plan is simple. We hit them with everything that explodes, burns, or punches holes in things. No energy weapons, no exotic physics, just good old-fashioned destruction. As the fleet prepared for its first faster-than-light jump, Chen received an encrypted message from High Crystal Arch Vex 9, who had somehow survived the fall of Nexus Prime and was now aboard one of the fleeing Zeltharian refugee ships. Commander Chen, the alien's translated voice carried centuries of pain and desperation. I must warn you that the Void Hunters are unlike any enemy you have faced. They do not simply kill. They consume everything that makes a civilization advanced. They turn our own progress against us. Understood, Chen replied. But you should know something about humans, Crystallarch. We don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure our enemies can never threaten anyone again. The jump to hyperspace was flawless, but nothing could have prepared the human crews for what they found at Kepler 442. The system that had once housed a thriving civilization of 12 billion peaceful beings was now a nightmare of cosmic horror. Void Hunters swarmed through space like living shadows, their forms shifting between states of matter as they fed on the quantum signatures of destroyed technology. Mother of God, whispered Lieutenant Morrison as the tactical display updated. There are thousands of them. The creatures ranged in size from small scout forms the size of shuttlecraft to massive queen entities that dwarfed human battleships. They moved in perfect coordination, their collective intelligence allowing them to respond to threats with terrifying efficiency. Where they had passed, not even debris remained, just empty space slowly healing from wounds torn in reality itself. All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez, the old warrior's voice cut through the shocked silence. Remember your training. These things eat energy and advanced technology. We're about to show them what happens when they try to digest lead and steel. The first phase of the attack was a concentrated nuclear barrage. 47 nuclear missiles launched simultaneously from different ships, their primitive but devastating warheads streaking toward the largest Void Hunter concentrations. The creatures attempted to drain the missiles' energy sources, but nuclear weapons didn't work that way. They were physics made manifest, matter converting to energy in ways that couldn't be simply absorbed. The explosions lit up the system like new stars. Void Hunters caught in the blasts simply ceased to exist, their exotic matter unable to maintain coherence against the brute force of nuclear fusion. For the first time in galactic memory, the creatures screamed, a sound that registered across multiple dimensions as their collective intelligence experienced pain. Phase 2, Admiral Rodriguez commanded. All ships, open fire with kinetic weapons. The human fleet unleashed a storm of projectiles that had no equal in galactic warfare. Railguns fired tungsten slugs at significant fractions of light speed. Missile pods released swarms of chemically propelled explosives. Point defense systems peppered space with depleted uranium rounds. Every weapon was designed around one simple principle: hitting the target really, really hard. The Void Hunters tried to adapt as they had against every other enemy, but there was nothing to adapt to. A tungsten slug moving at 20% of light speed didn't care about exotic physics or dimensional shifting. It punched through their forms and kept going, creating wounds that couldn't heal because there was no energy to drain. They're trying to retreat, reported Captain Park as her fighters swarmed around the larger Void Hunter forms, peppering them with explosive rounds. The smaller ones are attempting to flee toward the outer system. Negative, Rodriguez replied coldly. No survivors. Chase them down. This was where human psychology became a weapon more terrible than any explosive. The Zeltharians and other galactic species fought defensive wars, seeking to protect their worlds and minimize casualties. Humans fought wars of extermination, pursuing fleeing enemies until none remained to threaten them again. The battle became a systematic hunt as human ships pursued the surviving Void Hunters throughout the system. Fighter squadrons cornered stragglers in asteroid belts. Destroyers ran down fleeing scouts. The heavy cruisers focused their fire on the queen entities, whose massive forms made them easy targets for sustained kinetic bombardment. Commander, Dr. Webb's excited voice crackled over the communication system. We're observing something unprecedented. The Void Hunters' collective intelligence is breaking down. They're not adapting to our attacks because there's nothing to adapt to. Our weapons are too simple and direct. Chen watched as the largest queen entity, something that had probably consumed entire civilizations, was systematically torn apart by concentrated railgun fire. Each tungsten slug created massive trauma that the creature couldn't repair fast enough. "It's like using a hammer to fix a computer problem," she observed. "Sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective." The final phase of the battle was the most brutal. With their larger forms destroyed, the remaining Void Hunters tried to hide among the system's gas giants, hoping their exotic nature would protect them from human weapons. Admiral Rodriguez ordered the deployment of humanity's most primitive and effective weapon, chemical explosives. Torpedo bombers dove into the gas giant atmospheres, releasing payloads of conventional high explosives mixed with incendiary compounds. The resulting firestorms burned through the exotic matter of the Void Hunters like acid through paper. The creature's energy-absorbing abilities were useless against simple chemical reactions that produced heat and pressure. Within 8 hours, the battle was over. Not a single Void Hunter remained alive in the Kepler 442 system. The creatures that had consumed 47 star systems and brought down the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had been completely annihilated by what they would have considered primitive projectile weapons and chemical explosives. "All ships, report casualties," Admiral Rodriguez ordered as the fleet regrouped. "UES Vigilant reports minor hull damage from debris," came the first response. "UES Phoenix lost 2 fighters to collision with Void Hunter remains." UES Defiance reports all systems nominal. Chen couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Admiral, are you telling me we just eliminated an entire Void Hunter swarm with minimal casualties?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you, Commander. These cosmic parasites were perfectly evolved to fight advanced civilizations. They never encountered an enemy stupid enough to just shoot them with bullets and blow them up with chemical explosives." High Crystallarch Vex 9's signal reached them as the human fleet began salvage operations. "Commander Chen, we have been monitoring your battle from the edge of the system. What you have accomplished is impossible by every scientific model we possess. How did you achieve total victory against an enemy that has destroyed thousands of our most powerful warships?" Sarah Chen smiled as she looked out at her victorious fleet. "Crystallarch, you spent millennia becoming the most advanced species in the galaxy. We spent millennia perfecting the art of breaking things and killing our enemies. When you fight monsters that consume advanced technology, sometimes what you need isn't better technology. Then what do you need? Bigger hammers." The news of humanity's victory spread through the surviving refugee fleets faster than light-speed communication. For the first time since the Void Hunter invasion began, hope flickered in the darkness. The galaxy's most primitive species had succeeded where its most advanced had failed, proving that sometimes progress meant going backward to the simple, brutal effectiveness of kinetic weapons and chemical explosives. But Chen knew this was only the beginning. There were more Void Hunter swarms out there, and now they would be expecting human tactics. The real war was just starting, and humanity was about to teach the galaxy that when humans fight, they don't stop until every threat is eliminated. The age of energy weapons and exotic physics was ending. The age of fire and fury had begun.